I think Ben Shapiro was talking about how they're having to really pour a lot of infrastructure into their website and trying to drive people off of some of these excess platforms like YouTube, because they feel as if there could come a point where they have put so much stock in these platforms that if they completely just yank it away, then they're left with nothing. And so they want to drive people back to their website individually. And one of the other, and I want to get Tim's opinion on that too, but the other thing too, I was reading a book about how to essentially build up your listener base as well. This author, I think his name is Graham Cochran, was suggesting that you should not focus on building up your social media, but rather your email list, because people don't change their emails, but you don't know what's going to happen to a particular platform. If Twitter gets bought out and changed, then, that was great for us, but for the libs, it
was great for them too, but they were mad.
For everybody.
Yeah. So the meme about the left is, they're not mad that they're being censored. They're being mad that you're no longer censored.
Yeah. Exactly.
Which is why they thought it was a bad thing. I completely agree. Yeah. But because of that purchase, a lot of people left that social media platform. So this person's arguing that you basically have to create your own little bubble of infrastructure, build up your following on the website, and people don't change their email addresses. They might go off of a platform like Parler, whether if we want it to stay around, that's great, but it might just wake up and it's not there the next day. You don't know what's going to happen to it, but it's essentially like your mailing address. You always have some form of a mailing address. You might switch your email address, but it's far less often than if you move off of a social media platform.
I do think there's something to say about originally mainstream media got a lot of their credibility from being the only ones around. They were the only news sources. Sure. They had a monopoly, and now we had different social media platforms allowing different types of accessibility. So now that's not what the mainstream media is good for. But the thing that I still think that they have that other podcasts don't is access. They have access to high-ranking political officials. They have access to different representatives. Madison, maybe you could tell us a little bit about this, but I don't know. It seems for every scoop, from Republican reps, it always goes to Politico, New York Times, Axios. It's never really going to the Daily Wire. It's never really going to Timcast. So it's still in the Republican ecosystem of elected officials. They go to MSNBC. They'll still do some Fox, and Fox will still get some breaking news. But Trump talks to Maggie Haberman from the New York Times all the time, and Axios. I read Axios' news because that's where they're getting a lot of these quotes from.
It's generational. So right now, we've had Kash Patel on this show, I think, 3 times or more? 3 times? 4 times. And he's fantastic. We're huge fans, and I consider him a friend of the show. This world is changing. The people that are entering this administration, we know many of them. And this is where that access is moving into our space, and you're going to get real, authentic conversations. Maggie Haberman and these people at the Times or whatever, they're plastic people. They're going to call
the Republicans give them access.
Of course, and they shouldn't. But but it doesn't matter what I think they should or shouldn't do, because it will change. And in the future, it's not going to be, let's say in 15, 20 years, it's no longer going to be like the New York Times calling a person like Kash Patel and saying, we need a quote on this. It's going to be Kash Patel being like, hey, can I pop on the show and talk about a thing that's going on? And it's going to be more authentic, raw conversations where your political leaders, your law enforcement leaders are going to sit down 2 hours raw and be like, dude, I will tell you exactly what is happening, and you judge for yourself if you think I'm telling the truth. But when you put someone in that position, like Donald Trump talking for 3 hours with Rogan, you see the authentic conversation. You can see where Trump is like, maybe I don't want to answer this or whatever, and he tries, and you get it. But this is why Kamala Harris couldn't do it. It's why the shows she went on was a deeply controlled system where she said, you come to me. And then you had that moment where Hannity said that staffers were back there being like, we got to go. Like, we're out of time. That's all over. We are moving into the podcast era. Authenticity.
Well, just to touch on your question earlier, but I will say one big part that is changing is guys, especially when I came into office and a lot of people started following and coming into office. I mean, we would break stories to our friends versus going to the Times or going to at Politico and things like that, because we know that that's the future and these are our friends. We want to help our friends. That's one thing that I love about the conservative movement is we have created an ecosystem where, I mean, obviously the establishment came really hard after me, but I didn't lose a single friend who's like in the conservative movement.
We also use the legacy media to our advantage too, because in DC, here's another thing that people like the Times and the Washington Post are now having to deal with is that Republicans like the hit pieces that are being written against them a lot of the time. And the way that you are supposed to harness that, it is essentially earned media. If you get a hit piece written by the New York Times or somebody like that against a Republican, because everybody knows that the Times and the Post are against Republicans. Yeah. So you are presented with a gift from the legacy media, and if you don't take that and start fundraising off of it immediately, then you have just wasted an enormous opportunity. There were headlines that Madison would get sometimes that we would get, and I would read the hit piece and be like, this is pretty decent. We ought to send out an email blast on this. And we would.
Exactly. Like,
and, we'd call the reporter and I'd say, so at what point does this cross the line and become an in-kind contribution to the campaign? Honestly.
Yeah.
And so Republicans need to adapt because the environment has changed from where it was a decade ago. It's not the end of your political career if you get a bad article written about you. It is an opportunity. And if you take that opportunity and understand the media landscape now and utilize it, then you can profit off of their idiocy.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.